Okay, everything is everybody all right to go, everybody then?
Yep, I've started the live stream.
And can you confirm it's working, Alia?
Yes, it's working.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are live now. Thank you very much. This is a meeting of West Yorkshire Combined Authority on Thursday, the 4th of February. Welcome. You will see lots of people in this room. Some of them are Combined Authority members and will be voting for the items on the agenda. Some people are Combined Authority officers and advisors who will be supporting us to make those decisions as we go through. So first of all, apologies for absence. Any apologies for absence?
Yes, we've got apologies from Councillor Keith Aston, and we've got Councillor Andy de Gorn here as sub, and apologies from Councillor Pandor and Councillor McBride's here as sub.
Lovely, thank you very much. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests? Anything? No. Exempt information. Now, this is obviously for the final item. Do I have to read this out now, or do I do it at when we get to the item?
I think we just need to make the resolution, Councillor Hinchcliffe, that we will exempt the press and public from the ESIP's third item. Okay,
so do we do that now though, or do we do that at the time?
We just need to agree that we will take that in private.
Okay, yeah. Do we agree that now though?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay. Do you need me to read this out now?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So in that case, can I ask people to say if they are happy to have that? Well, can they agree to the fact that it has to be an exempt piece of information? Because obviously it's EU. Can we all just raise our hands in the screen to show assent? Thank you very much. I think that is carried. Thank you. So we'll tackle that item when we get to it. Go back to my screen again. So that's that. Minutes of the meeting of the Combined Authority held on 10th of December. Those have been circulated. Are people happy with those? Are there any comments or questions they got on those? No. Okay, well, so we take those as a correct record of that meeting in that case. Thank you very much. So going on to the next item, which is for decision, and it's the COVID-19 update. Now, sadly, we usually have to start this by saying, obviously, this continues to have a huge emotional and physical impact on people's lives. Many people have lost loved ones, and our condolences go absolutely to those families and friends of those people. It is a real tragedy for them, but also a tragedy for society at large. We at the Combined Authority focus very much on the economic challenges of this, whereas the local authorities are dealing with the social side of the pandemic. But at the Combined Authority, we're dealing a lot with the fact that businesses are suffering, businesses are going bust, jobs are being lost. And it is having a massively detrimental impact on our economy. Of course, we're not unique in that. That is the same case all over the country, in fact, all over the globe. But there are just specific things that we've been doing and putting in place to try and support our economy as it travels through this very difficult time. So we have on this item, Brian, who is going to give us an update on what we're doing to support businesses. Brian Archer is a Director of Economic Services. Brian, do you want to start this item, and Alan may contribute as well?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll take the paper as read, but what I would like to do is just share with the board two slides. One just setting out the latest position on the economy in West Yorkshire, and then how we're responding to those immediate challenges. So if you could just bear with me while I get the slide up on the presentation. Hopefully members can all see that. As at the 3rd of February, obviously we're still facing some monumental economic challenges. There were some bright spots, I have to say. insofar as the number of people that are currently on furlough in West Yorkshire has fallen 12% to 112,000. At the peak, this was 340,000. So some good news on that, and some good news that vacancies have actually stabilised. However, the downside is, I'm sure it will come as no surprise to everyone, is that the claimant count has gone up significantly. 86% increase in the claimant count to 106,000 in West Yorkshire. Retail recovery, as everyone will expect, is significantly slowed down. The retail recovery index shows that footfall is obviously still well down whilst we've been in lockdown. And we've also started to see an increase in business liquidations. Now, members will be aware that the level of liquidations actually fell, but that was more to do with the rules on business solvency changing, which appeared to reduce the number of solvencies. But we are actually seeing that increase, so 22% increase in business failures across the region. There was a bright spot insofar as the number of new business bank accounts that have been opened in the region has actually increased by 3%. And that suggests that some of the people that have been made redundant and coming off furlough are considering self-employment as an option moving forward. So hopefully that will make some inroads into increasing the levels of business stock across the region. In terms of the activities that we've got underway to try and mitigate some of the economic impacts, working very closely with our local authority colleagues, we've seen £128 million worth of grants dispersed to over 63,000 businesses, which is a phenomenal achievement and a real testament to how the combined authority and local authorities have worked together to get that much needed funding through to the businesses that need it most. We've also provided some additional support to help businesses trade online, with businesses being supported with digital vouchers where they can get a grant towards trading online. And we're also supporting them to improve their resilience through management development programs and peer group learning programs that have been delivered through the University of Leeds and the Business School, alongside working with the Chambers of Commerce and the Federation of Small Business in the region. Talked about cybersecurity and online, businesses trading online, obviously a really important issue for business at the moment. So again, we're providing support for that, as well as a series of webinars, again, to improve business resilience and business support. In parallel with that, that's obviously part of the rescue phase. We're looking at the medium-term recovery. We are shaping up an entrepreneurship proposition, which will be brought back to the combined authority for consideration to increase the number of startups and support some of those disadvantaged communities, looking at how we can increase the number of high growth business startups, as well as community wealth building and developing cooperative businesses, so that we're able to support all of our communities. The other point I would like to mention is obviously on skills. The Employment Hub, which is an essential element in providing support to individuals that are out of work or coming off furlough, supported over 3,500 individuals over the last few months. And we're also delivering Reboot training, which is support for individuals to be trained in technology skills, and that's delivered online. Now, of course, that is a barrier for some individuals and some communities. And there's always consideration of the digital divide and what we can do to support that, to make sure that everybody's got access to a laptop, computer and broadband. And we've been commissioning some work to look at the scale of that challenge across West Yorkshire and how we can coordinate that more effectively to ensure that we can get the support that's needed into some of those communities. That's it from me, Chair. Happy to take questions on the paper or on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian, for that. And thank you for all the work you and the team are doing to support our businesses during this very difficult time. Obviously, the paper talks of recovery. We do have a West Yorkshire Economic Recovery Plan of 1.4 billion, which we're obviously present it to government, and we're pushing for them to fund. We do need the economic recovery to be really done at combined authority and local level. Otherwise, it's going to be very cumbersome, really, to get economic growth going in the north of England. So we're pushing very much for that kind of approach from government, but it remains to be seen whether they will commit to that, not just for us, but for other areas as well. There is some money in this paper, obviously, for local economic recovery. So you'll see a portion of funding going to each of the 5 local authorities, because we all have our own local economic recovery plans, which fit in with that West Yorkshire picture. So hopefully you've noted that as well, and that is for approval today. Very valuable resource that we all need around giving people a future. Any questions or comments? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for Brian, please. We've heard that the furlough payments have reduced, and in some ways that might be a good thing because it means people have resumed full-time payments for their employment. But as you pointed out, Brian, it also means that a lot of people, unfortunately, have gone from furlough to unemployment. And so amongst that large increase in unemployed, a number of those people are probably people that haven't been unemployed either ever before or recently. A lot of skilled individuals that don't need specific retraining. So it's a different cohort of unemployment that's occurred here. So I'm just wondering, Brian, are there any special additional plans that we have to really step up the efforts to get these skilled workers back into employment somehow as fast as we can? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Brian, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lee. Yes, I mean, we've significantly scaled up the support through the Employment Hub, and we've got a £13.5 million investment in the Employment Hub, and that's a service that's specifically addressing those issues in terms of matching those skilled individuals up with the right opportunities in the marketplace to find these people work. We're also working very, very closely with Job Centre Plus and the careers advisors to provide, much better advice and guidance, and looking at the skills and capabilities of some of those individuals to see whether they could be redeployed in other sectors where people have got transferable skills. So there's a lot of investment that's going into that brokerage service to match people up with those opportunities. We are doing everything we can to get those people back into work. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I mean, I think it's all important to say as well that all of us now have to, regardless of whether we're in a job or recently employed or a long time unemployed, we all have to keep updating our skills, don't we? Because the market automation is going so fast. Just because you've got a job now and skills now, you might need new skills in the future. It's a very different world. So that lifelong learning is so important to deliver, and something I know the government has thought about, and we also in the Combined Authority have plans for.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to know.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Galton, I think you were first, and then Councillor Paulson.
Can I just endorse your comments about lifelong learning? I think all party we can get behind that one. But my question was very specific, actually, and it was to do with some of the interventions that were mentioned in the slide. One of them talked about money that's being given to West Yorkshire and Leeds Chamber of Commerce for small businesses. And I was just wanting to get a flavour of how we will be measuring the success of that investment to see whether or not it would be useful to scale it up in future. So how do we measure that money that's been invested in those small businesses through the Chamber is delivering outcomes that merit the investment?
Thank you. Can I go to Councillor Paulson before I go back to Brian on that? Councillor Paulson?
Yeah, funnily, mine's a similar veined question, actually, so quite taken together. You mentioned in the presentation that a positive that we can take from this is the number of sort of new business bank accounts seems to be increasing. obviously we're very resilient in Yorkshire, and it does look like, you know, from the back of that, maybe people who have sadly lost jobs are, you know, maybe looking to set up their own small businesses. It would be good to see if there was any piece of work looking at sort of what sectors or industries these new businesses are being set up in. And off the back of what Councillor Galton said, the funding and support that's going into business membership schemes, the Chamber of Commerce, Federation of Small Businesses was supporting, I think it said about 300 small businesses, whether they're new businesses that are setting up or existing, and what the sort of the differences between the two. How are we supporting these new businesses that are being set up in a difficult time for anybody setting up a business?
Brian, do you want to come back in on those two questions? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just on the first point of demonstrating impact and value for money on the interventions, it's always a challenge trying to ascribe causality to a business support intervention, because a business could grow for any number of reasons. But we do have some evaluation metrics in place for programs, you know, like the Chamber of Commerce program, which is to provide businesses with support for export documentation and dealing with some of the challenges related to Brexit. Some of the broader economic metrics are around business survival rates, business growth, and jobs safeguarded, as well as some of the more sort of broader economic measures around gross value added. Specifically with regards to internationalisation, you could say that where we've provided support to a business through a Chamber of Commerce export programme, you can track the level of export sales as a result of that intervention, where we've provided specific advice to remove a barrier for that individual business. With regards to the support for business startups at pre-start level and early stage business, as part of the economic assessment, we are looking at key sectors and where the growth is going to come from in those key sectors, and how we can stimulate more startups in those particular sectors to support more entrepreneurship, and that will be brought forward as a proposal to the combined authority moving forward. What was the other point? Sorry, pardon me. The second question on entrepreneurship.
About we're supporting 300 businesses at the moment. So what's sort of the split between new businesses and existing ones?
I'd have to come back to you on the absolute breakdown, because obviously through the business gateway we get lots of inquiries from individuals who are considering starting their own business, as well as inquiries from existing businesses. So I would have to come back to you on the split. We do measure, you know, the new firm formation rates. We are tracking the number of new business bank accounts, but not all businesses. It's not easy to come up with an absolute figure, because not all businesses would register for VAT, which is the traditional measure of new business starts. So I would have to come back to you with an approximate split of pre-start individuals and existing businesses, if I may.
Let's make sure that's shared then. Councillor Lee, do you want to come back in? I'm just, I think you've been...
Yes, Chair, very briefly, Chair. Thank you. Just with respect to Councillor Galton's point about it would be very useful if we could rapidly measure the impact of the involvement of the schemes that we have running with the chambers. I do sort of have an interest to declare I am an ex-director of the Mid-Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce and a great believer in what they do. But if we can get some early indications that it's working, well, then we can consider what we do next, because these people at the Chambers of Commerce and indeed the Federation of Small Businesses and other similar organisations, they're at the heart of business, and we want to try to give small nascent businesses absolutely every opportunity to get started. It's getting started that's the real difficult bit. So I endorse Stuart's comments there. Let's find out if it does work, and if we've got something that we know works demonstrably, we can develop it further. I think that would be a very good thing, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. So if you can take those comments on board, Brian, and obviously make sure that, I'm sure you are doing already, but obviously investing in the programs that make the most difference, I think, is what we're saying. It's very important that we
Final
know
point,
what
if I may.
works.
Final point. if I may.
Briefly, Brian, because we need to move on to the next agenda.
We've commissioned some independent evaluation of the some of the business support activity, which again we can bring back to a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll be welcome. Lovely. So we're moving on now to the recommendations. I think Alan, you're indicating.
Yes, please. Sorry, Chair. Just before we come to the recommendations, I wanted to draw attention to the £5 million that you mentioned earlier. To go to support local authority recovery and simply to clarify that and clarify so that for the minutes really that in order to ensure that this funding can be delivered expediently to local authorities and begun to be spent on those important local economic recovery plans, particularly given the absence of additional funding from government, that we're proposing that this is done outside of the assurance process. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right, thank you for that clarification. Lovely. So I'm happy to propose those recommendations. Can I see all those in favour, please show? Lovely. Thank you very much. I was indicating. Thank you. That is carried. Moving on now then to the next paper, which is Councillor Denise Jeffrey and Chair of the Investment Committee, about capital project spending and approvals. And I believe Roger Marsh is on the phone, on the call somewhere as well, if I think he's also a member of that committee. But Councillor Jeffries, would you like to lead on this?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. In summary, this is to give approval to the progression and funding of the combined authority schemes as recommended by the Investment Committee. The report sets details of 3 schemes considered on the January the 7th and the 3rd of February and recommends to the combined authority progression of these schemes, funding approvals and in some case approval to changes of schemes. I wasn't actually able to attend the meeting on the 3rd of February and there is a decision needs to be made on Thorpe Park, and I'm asking Roger in a minute to give us details on that. But the report maps out each of the schemes on the assurance progress and details which is set out below. The schemes really come to the value of 64.612 million and will require 27.87 million of the combined authority funding when fully approved. Full approval of 16.892 million is sought as part of this report. Can I just ask Roger to talk about the Thorpe Park one, please, Chair?
Thank you, Roger.
Yes, thank you, Denise. And as set out on page 29 of the papers, the headlines of the scheme, the Parkway Railway Station proposed at Thorpe Park on the Leeds to York link as part of the Transpennine Rail route, and it sets out the details there. The approval sought today from the combined authority, as recommended by the Investment Committee yesterday, is that we proceed through from the decision point 3, which is the outline business case, and that we commence activity for the development of the full business case. And in that, the total funding sought from the combined authority currently indicatively is £13.9 million, and the funding sought today is some £4.7 million. There is the matter of the private sector contribution to agree further down the process once we've got the full business case developed. And so the recommendation of the Investment Committee to this combined authority is that you approve the process as I've just outlined, and perhaps we'll come to that when all of the recommendations are considered. I think that's probably enough, Denise, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Roger. So this is the real engine room of the combined authority in terms of decisions and the major projects that have been delivered across the region. And it is great to see that in spite of the current pandemic and all the brakes put on our economy, there's still hope for the future because we're still approving projects that are going to deliver some of that growth in the future. So it's all good, is that. Any more comments or questions on this? No. Okay. In that case, we'll move straight to vote. I take that as a recommendation from Councillor Jeffrey. Are we all happy to support that? Please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. So moving on now to the next item, which is bus and COVID and recovery, etc. Councillor Groves, I know this has been, as chair of the Transport Committee for West Yorkshire, this has been a major part of your work over the last few months, isn't it? And how is it looking at the moment?
Thank you, Chair. And obviously we launched our connectivity strategy around mass transit last week. We're obviously in challenging times in terms of COVID bus funding. We continue to pay over the concessions. However, the government are really keen that actually a recovery partnership is in place for the first quarter. So that's what we've been focusing on. The problem that we've got, it's not that we're not ready, that we've got the work ready, the recovery partnership is in place, and we are also looking at an enhanced partnership, which is again what the government would like to see, is that we haven't had any confirmation from central government in terms of funding, which obviously could cause us pressure on our budgets going forward, Yorkshire. Obviously, we are awaiting that announcement. We're expecting it probably around March. But obviously, the decline in the fare box is a concern, and future models of bus is a concern. So we continue to work with government. We're putting in place everything that has been requested of us to actually meet the criteria for the funding, and we plan the recovery. We also have obviously been working for a couple of years now on proposals for bus reform. So that work continues, and that obviously may involve franchising. So I'm just going to bring in our Director of Transport, Dave Pearson.
Thank you, Councillor Groves. In terms of the financial elements of this, at the moment, the bus service is supported, as Councillor Groves says, by a combination of the Combined Authority continuing to pay concessionary fares at the rates prior to the pandemic, and government providing a grant. The expectation is that it will move to a new form of funding probably in the first quarter of the next financial year. And the indications from government, but we haven't had anything firm yet, is that that would involve government providing funding, as Councillor Groves says, to mayoral combined authorities to basically administer the nursing of the bus service back to some sort of financial health over the next year or so. And that's what the recovery partnership and the recovery funding is meant to intend, alongside the decisions which we would take as a combined authority related to concessionary fares. So this paper is really a bit of context for the budget discussion you'll have with the next paper, to say, well, actually, we're heading into some fairly uncertain times financially in terms of the cost of the interventions the combined authority makes for bus. So the key element of this is the value of what funding might come from government. We've commissioned some work to estimate the funding gap between the cost of operating the service as currently operates and the depressed fares revenue that's there at the moment, and how that might recover and how quickly that might recover for different segments of the market. So we've done our calculations. We've given our numbers to government in terms of the value of the gap, and we await, as Councillor Groves says, the national bus strategy, which is government sort of setting out its roadmap, as it were, in terms of how it wants to not just deal with COVID, but deal with bus services going forward, together with an announcement probably sometime around about, possibly around about the budget time or thereabouts, as to what the value of funding that will come to the combined authority to deal with that. What we will need to do is come back to yourselves with an assessment as to the adequacy of that, and how we expect the process to proceed. Some of this is determined obviously by the speed at which the economy recovers, and so there are lots of unknowns at the moment, but that's basically where we are right at the moment. And I think as subsequent meetings, obviously, that this will emerge and develop as a key theme in terms of how we manage the combined authorities budgets into the new financial year.
Thank you very much, Dave. Obviously, key concern is that the responsibility where the money is devolved, but not at the same level. And therefore, that doesn't enable us to continue the same services, does it? And we have to take the blame then, rather than other people taking accountability for decisions.
That's the risk.
Councillor Lee. Councillor Lee, we can't hear you, Councillor Lee.
I'm so sorry. Councillor Groves is quite correct. There's no official confirmation of this, but as you know, we signed the Combined Authority letter about bus funding together with all of the other members. But we also sent our own letter to government, and we've had a reply. So this isn't official, but I would say that the reply that we've received gives me and the other members of the Conservative group no reason for pessimism. There seemed to be a genuine commitment to keep up the funding. That's not official, but I'm not expecting it to be something horrible when we get the official notification. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchcliffe, could I just come back in?
You may, thank you.
I just wanted to thank everyone for the support and for the additional correspondence that you sent to government, Councillor Lee, and we are being as optimistic as we can. We want a great vision on bus for the people of West Yorkshire, and now I know that you've probably got more information, you quickly become my phoner friend. Yeah, let's hope that the settlement is good for West Yorkshire.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that, Councillor Lee. Any further questions, comments? No. Okay, in that case, we'll take the paper as noted. There doesn't seem to be a major decision on that paper, so if that's okay, and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a decision, of course, because it is the budget. And the budget has been challenging to achieve this year, as it has been often in recent years at the Combined Authority, largely because of the uncertainty, but also because of the subject we've just been talking about, which is public transport and buses. And we're still subsidising to a great degree the public transport system of West Yorkshire through the concessionary fares that we continue to fund at the same level, in spite of the fact that there is way lower number of passengers using them than would normally be the case. Yet government are asking us to keep up the concessionary fares, obviously to keep the whole ecosystem of buses running, but that's the kind of world we're living in at the moment. And where's Angela on my screen?
I'm here.
Angela, would you like to give us the key points here?
I will, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the paper you've got in front of you provides an updated position for the current year's revenue budget, a proposed revenue budget for 2021-22, which includes the transport levy, which must by law be set by the 14th of February. So that's one of the decisions we need to take today. Includes a headline corporate plan, an indicative capital budget, and the Treasury management statement. There's clearly a lot of information in the budget paper, and it's been the subject of a number of reports throughout the year. We've also had the budget working group working closely with officers to come up with this position. I think you're all, as the Chair said, very familiar with the challenges of setting budgets at the moment in a COVID world, and with a lot of uncertainties over funding coming through to local authorities and to combined authorities. And building on the previous paper that set out in some more detail the very specific risks and opportunities potentially in being part of that bus recovery post-COVID. We are, in setting the budget, very mindful that we have a wide agenda of things we want to deliver next year. We've been working through our detailed business plans, and in Appendix 2 in the paper, you have our summary corporate plan on a page which sets out against the 4 big priorities what it is we are seeking to deliver next year. The sort of key headlines from the paper are that we are presenting today a balanced outturn for this year and a balanced position for next year. It's not been without its challenges to reach. We have managed to make a very small saving on concessionary travel as a result of the change in patronage at the outbreak of the pandemic. We've had some government funding on the bus recovery side, and that's helped us to get to a balanced position. but for next year's balanced position, we've had to assume some savings, and we're working through the detail of how we will achieve those. But I'm confident in reviewing the figures we've got, and as things become clearer as we progress through these times of uncertainty, we will be able to identify a way to make those savings happen and ensure we balance the budget. This is, of course, the first budget for us as a mayoral combined authority, and you should see, therefore, in the papers some differences to previous years. So we've got additional funding coming in around brownfield housing, for example. We had an education budget. It does also, of course, have to recognise the additional costs that come to us. So we need to meet the cost of the mayoral election, and we are proposing meeting this and other additional costs through a mix of our mayoral capacity funding and a very small top slice of the gain share. This would enable us to have some capacity and flexibility to support the new mayoral arrangement, and for us to work with our partners, making sure we can manage the broader range of functions and responsibilities that come our way. To conclude, really, given the level of change, the risks, the uncertainty, particularly around bus funding, which makes up a significant proportion of our revenue spend, and the uncertainty arising from the pandemic, we will be very closely monitoring what actually happens and whether the assumptions we've built into this budget are indeed what comes to pass. So we'll be bringing back regular reports on the budget in the coming year. We are proposing in here that we retain our general reserves at around the 8 million level, which we had last year and this year. So that gives us a small buffer for dealing with unexpected or emerging pressures in the year. But I think if you looking back to some of the big challenges out there and the recovery plans we have, that it's clearly not a viable option for funding many of the large scale issues that may come our way. So there's very much a year of being mindful of where our money is going and taking opportunities where we can find them. There are a large number of recommendations that flow from all of this. They're set out on page 111 of the paper. I'm happy to take questions on any aspect of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. So obviously it is quite a vast document, really, and just shows the breadth of services and involvement we had having those. Roger, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. And it is a very detailed question, Chair, to Angela, and it's in relation to the EIB borrowing facility. I know we have a 5-year facility, but that was agreed some little while ago, and it would just be helpful to clarify what further time that's got to run, and where we are, or otherwise, in terms of perhaps refreshing that facility, because there will become a time relatively soon when we'll start wanting to use that and other facilities to deliver the ongoing West Yorkshire Plus Transport scheme, amongst other things. So just a clarification point would be helpful.
Thank you. I believe we've got 3 years on that still to run. It is still there waiting for us, and it was set up particularly around the Transport Fund. I think now we are a mayoral combined authority. Our funding flows are very different. Our opportunity to borrow is increased, obviously subject to all the requirements around Prudential Code. So I think we'll certainly be looking at the borrowing proposals for the coming year to support what comes out of how we want to spend gain share, how we want to deploy the funds we've got. So we'll bring a report, we'll probably bring something back through governance and audit around treasury management and those borrowing options, and report back through to combined authority over the coming year.
Helpful. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Hi, yeah, just a specific one. On the 38 million gain share windfall funding, can we have some reassurance that that will be thoroughly scrutinised, what that money is spent on, through scrutiny going ahead?
Yeah, I mean, so we've approved some this morning, haven't we? That £5 million that we approved for economic recovery in the 5 local authority areas is part of that. And also in previous papers, we've done the 13.5 million for skills. Obviously that will go through scrutiny and they can call in to see what all the papers that they need. Ben, did you want to add anything to that? Or in fact, Angela, actually. Angela, sorry, I should have come to you to that.
Chair, well, I could just come in to say...
Or either of you, it's fine.
I think the simplest answer to Councillor Paulson's question is that we're developing something as part of the arrangements for the devolution deal to create something called a single investment fund, and that will map out the process by which future funding decisions are taken, and that will come to the Combined Authority at a future meeting.
Thank you. Angela, did you want to add anything to that?
No, just to support that, I think what we've very much taken this first year as a transitional year. We've only just had confirmation that we've got the gain share. So this report, as it was written, was caveated about whether the gain share would come in or not. So we've made there are some decisions being put and agreed by the Combined Authority for this year. But as Ben says, there's very much a process that we will be coming forward with soon. Investments will have to go through the assurance framework and will be available to be scrutinised. Along with all of the other decisions that we do put to Combined Authority.
Lovely, thank you, Angela. Any more questions or comments? I've got Councillor Harrand first.
Yes, I just reassure that we are aware of the gain share fund being used for all sorts of purposes, and we will look for a regular report of how it's being used and how it fits in with the priorities. I'm sure it's not going to be used as sort of slush fund for vanity projects or to top up people's or overspending or anything like that at all, is it? Keep shaking your head, Angela. But we will indeed ask for regular reports on this 38 million a year with no certain direction of expenditure.
So this is obviously new for all of us, isn't it? Having money which is unring fenced to spend on regional priorities. And that is a wonderful opportunity for us as local leaders to spend it on the things that we know are important to the communities that we represent. And that, of course, has to be around, because this is Combined Authority, it has to be around economy, jobs, skills, and cultural recovery as well. Obviously, culture is a very strong element of what we do in this region, and is going to be a key element going forward for economic recovery. So I can assure you, Councillor Harrand, that is certainly front of my mind, and I'm sure colleagues' minds as well. And before I go back to Angela, I think Councillor Lee also had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, we're all answering and asking the similar question here. My observation was, and I know Councillor Harrand is aware of this, and you just confirmed it, but this is new territory for us. There's a large amount of money coming in, and I think there's every reason to urge the strongest possible scrutiny, particularly as we're just getting this off to a good start. We don't want to make a bad start. We've got to absolutely ensure the efficient use of our money, and so scrutiny is a key thing now that I urge us all to get behind and make sure that we look at everything very carefully. Thank you.
Well, of course, this committee has, including yourself, Councillor, has a vote on that as well. So it's all going to be matched with the West Yorkshire Economic Recovery Framework as well. So I would urge you to look at both documents at the same time. Angela, would you like to come in perhaps on those 2 points?
I think just to conclude that, as we've said before, that there will be a due process behind how the gain share money is spent. It is also subject to government scrutiny. It's part of the conditions of getting the gain share, so we need to be able to demonstrate what we have done with the money. It most certainly isn't a slush fund to be used to meet people's pet requirements. There will be a proper, thorough, proper decision making behind it, proper governance of it, proper scrutiny of it, and we'll bring all that detail back to a future meeting.
Although I have to say, the fact that government looks at it shouldn't be an issue. We can manage our own affairs. We don't need national government to check what we're doing all the time. That's what we need to get out of that mindset. Devolution is about us making the decisions based on what we know the people we represent want. And therefore, let's not worry too much about what government thinks about things like that. Devolution rules okay. So, Roger Marsh.
I just wanted to come in and just reassure colleagues that, as we did yesterday, projects, whether it be using gain share or other forms of public money, will come through have come through the investment committee to date, and it's all about the importance of those projects as part of that wider economic recovery and social improvement recipe. But as others have said, it is new territory for us, and whilst we've focused to date on the supply side of the equation in terms of getting people upskilled, reskilled, back into work, we obviously need to very quickly address the demand side to make sure that the quality of jobs that are on offer help drive up the inclusive growth outcomes that we all wish for across the wider West Yorkshire region.
Thank you. So any more comments or questions before we move to the vote? No? Okay, lovely. Well, I'm happy is probably too strong a word, because some of the things in there is obviously budget is not always a happy thing to do, because obviously it's a tight budget as well, but there's some positives in there as well. But I will recommend this paper for approval. Can I just see all those in favour, please show? Lovely, thank you very much. That is carried. So next item on the agenda, into my papers. At the top of the page. Is moving on to EU exit. So this is something that we wanted to monitor, really. Obviously, in amongst the pandemic and everything else that's happening at the moment, we've left the EU. I don't know if you've noticed, everybody. And that has obviously been something which has been seismic for this country's history. We wanted to monitor this, particularly from a business perspective, because we want to see how it's affecting businesses and what kind of support we need to put in place. I know we've had some money through, haven't we, for business support and advice. And of course, we've had an increased number of businesses wanting help with information around this, as of the Chambers, FSB and other business trade organisations. So I'm aware of that, but useful to see what we're doing on this issue. Alan, are you wanting to present on this?
If I may, Chair, I'll start off, and then just on summarising some of the work that we've been doing to understand the impacts, and then Brian's going to come in on the support that we're putting in place, if that's okay. So, as explained, the report summarises what the implications of the trade and cooperation agreement are, and gives you a summary of the support available, which, as I say, Brian will update on in a moment. The work that we've been doing so far since January the 1st has been around trying to understand the impact of the agreement on businesses in West Yorkshire, and clearly, in order to do that, we have been listening to businesses across the piece. This was discussed at the Economic Recovery Board on January the 14th. Clearly, we have COVID recovery and Brexit happening at the same time. So what our understanding so far, it will take some time for the full impact to be understood. Businesses are still adapting. Some of them have, they've had to make some made decisions before the 31st of December. Others have waited to see what happened on the 1st of January. But the full impact will take some time. We're finding that the requests for support that we're getting are quite complex. They often refer to really specific challenges in relation to how to comply with new rules or certification that's required, and so on. There are issues regarding the availability of people with the right skills and knowledge to navigate, help businesses navigate the new environment, and that's leading to some increased costs. So our role is very much trying to put in place support to help businesses navigating this new environment, and that's a good point for me to hand over to Brian.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Just in terms of what we're doing to support businesses with Brexit, I mean, the first thing that we did was try and understand the scale of the challenge for West Yorkshire. So we've done a considerable amount of work looking at the impact on the key sectors across the region and how we can mitigate that impact. I think there was some 1,200 pages in the deal, so a lot of work's been done to understand and assess that potential impact. And what that's done is enabled us to target our support much more effectively. We were successful in securing a small amount of funding, around £250,000 from BEIS, to support businesses. And I'm pleased to say that we've now got an EU transition support service locally. We're also contacting businesses through a telemarketing campaign, having targeted key businesses that are most likely to be affected. And as Alan said, feedback from businesses that some of the questions and queries are actually quite technical and quite complex. It's not just about VAT and export documentation. Sometimes there's quite technical questions around data transfer or food labelling and such like. So we've also commissioned some specialist consultants and legal advisors to provide legal advice for businesses and more generic support through a series of EU webinars, as well as some of the support that I alluded to earlier through the Chambers of Commerce and support through the West Yorkshire Consortium of Colleges, as well as support for businesses in the supply chain. So a whole host of things that we've managed to put in place at very short notice, and that actually complements some of the national activity. I mean, there's still a national business support helpline available to provide support, as well as some additional webinars. And feedback has been generally positive. Some big issues around transport and logistics still. I think I mentioned at the last meeting, delays at ports, not just because of export documentation and some of the new regulations, but because of a shortage of customs staff, people that are self-isolating and resource issues at the ports. In Dover, there was normally they get 6,000 lorries a day passing through the port. Currently, it's about 2,000 a day, and there's quite a significant backlog because of that kind of Brexit, COVID double whammy. But we have got a programme of support that's live and helping businesses, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions, comments? The paper is for noting, so there's no formal decisions to make here, but obviously it's good to keep abreast of the situation. So if there's no more comments or questions, then we'll go on to the next agenda item. Oh, sorry, Councillor Galton, I didn't see you with your yellow hand up there. Councillor Galton.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I was looking for a bit more detail in this report. It's quite short, and it sort of talks about what interventions are being made, helpfully, through the combined authority to mitigate the effect of Brexit and the new trade deal. So I was hoping to see something a little bit more positive in it, because I noted that Roger Marsh made comments to the Yorkshire Post about a great opportunity for the region, and I assumed that those comments had been made on some evidence that there was some potential in the Yorkshire economy, and I thought we'd see some of it here. So maybe we can have some reassurance that that's the case, and that the net benefit of the trade agreement is due to come sometime soon.
Thank you. Roger, Vietnam?
Yes, you're right, Councillor Galton. I did make the remark, and it wasn't limited to the new arrangements with Europe. It was also illustrating the wider opportunities that as a country, let alone as a region, Leeds City region or the north, whichever you want to look at it from, has in some of the emerging economies of the world. And you will have seen the recent announcement that it is the intention of the UK to become the first partner to accede to what's called CPTPP, which is the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, which includes such economies as Councillor Hinchliffe has mentioned, Vietnam, which is one of our biggest exporters of textile products from our region, interestingly, after the US. But for economies like Mexico, which the OECD, not me, believe that within a generation will be the 10th largest economy in the world. So it was in that context I was making my remarks of opportunities, and particularly for businesses to consider not only exporting to those new markets if they're already exporting, but actually to encourage businesses to think about exporting beyond obviously domestic supply. So that was the context in which my remarks were made, and the importance of our region being positioned because of it being a microcosm of the whole UK, albeit with its challenges because of our strength in financial professional services and the lack of arrangements currently agreed with EU in that area, that my remarks were canvassed and thereby delivered in that article.
Thank you. Regardless of what's happens next, I still maintain that the focus of the combined authorities always be right on education and transport and culture. I mean, those are the things that will drive our economy going forward. And obviously that's internationally as well as locally and regionally. Councillor Lee, you're indicating.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to reassure Stuart by absolutely agreeing with the comments of Roger Marsh. I personally have done a lot of business with Vietnam and visited the country many times, as indeed many of the other countries around the Pacific Rim and Southeast Asia. And there are absolutely enormous opportunities for businesses to do a lot more without the constraints of Europe around our necks. So I do agree with Stuart's point. We shouldn't be looking at negatives here. We should be viewing this as a whole new world of business, which is going to be tremendous for this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to see great agreement there between Councillor Galt and Councillor Lee. Any more questions on this subject? I'm sure we'll revisit this. Obviously, it's something we do seriously need to make sure that we do a lot of trade with the rest of the world. It is we need to present ourselves as a region which is a region of opportunity. We are huge in terms of the number of young people are here, the business base we've got here, and also the inward investment opportunities that are still coming here, aren't they, Roger? What you reported in the last meeting, there was actually quite a lot of interest in inward investment.
If I may just add, because and you know, in all of these challenging times that we're all facing collectively and individually, you could very easily think that the cup is definitely half empty and falling fast. The truth of the matter is that despite all of that which we're facing, it's worth noting that the interest in the city region, West Yorkshire being at the heart of it, is no less than it was pre-COVID. And the journey we've been on as a region, let's remind people positive that only a small number of years ago, after London, we were the 13th most attractive area for foreign direct and inward investment, and we're now third. And I believe that is something we should take some comfort from, but no availability for complacency, and certainly in my mind.
Lovely, thank you, Roger. So after that discussion, I don't see any more comments or questions. So if we take that paper as noted, and then we'll move on to the next item, which is strategic rail update, which has been presented by Councillor Blake, or should I say Baroness Blake. So this, sad to say, is the last meeting that we'll see Judith, Councillor Blake, with us presenting on the strategic rail update, because Councillor Blake has been elevated to the House of Lords, and we're very proud that one of our own from West Yorkshire has achieved that and is going to be influential in that place. Councillor Blake was the first female leader of Leeds Council back in 2015 and has been a councillor since 1996. Obviously, she's done great work for us regionally, but also nationally with the Local Government Association, and of course, Chair of Core Cities, been incredibly busy the last few years, really putting our region on the map. And of course, here helping us and leading our transport agenda, which is absolutely, as we said earlier, crucial to the future economic recovery. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, Councillor Blake, for all you have done and will continue, I know, to do for us here. So sorry to just break the meeting up a little bit with that, but I just wanted to say a few words just to mark the occasion, Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair, and I really appreciate your comments. And I just want to say how much I've enjoyed working with you all. And I think one of the great achievements of the last few years is that we've really pulled together across West Yorkshire and really recognising the incredible advantage of us all working together, recognising our differences, but also recognising how much more we add when we work together on so many different agenda items as we're seeing today. So I have to admit I am very excited about my new role, but I am also sorry to be leaving such good friends behind. But as you quite rightly say, my full intention is to go down to Westminster, banging the drum for West Yorkshire, obviously for Leeds, my home city as well, but for Yorkshire as a whole. And there's still an incredible amount to do on this agenda, and still a lot to champion. And please do think of me if I can be of any help or assistance at all, whether it's just for finding you a cup of tea when you come down to Westminster for meetings, but obviously really would like to still be involved in the very many important areas of work that are still ongoing. But thank you for your very kind words, and it's very, very much appreciated. So thank you. And of course, today we have the opportunity to highlight the ongoing area of work around rail. It's a very crowded agenda, as you know, and obviously has had COVID has had a massive impact on the work that we've been doing. But we have been very active across the north through TfN, but also up and down the eastern corridor, whether it's for East Coast Mainline or HS2 East. We've managed to achieve a significant number of meetings, keeping the engagement really where it needs to be. And conversations with ministers have made it clear that the fact that we have been very active and vocal and making a really good strategic cases means that all of the projects that we've been talking about are still very much on the agenda with government. Clearly, I think we have to be frank and honest that the NIC report was a massive disappointment, and we expressed our views to the team at the Commission that we didn't feel they'd taken adequate notice of the business case, the economic case that we had put together, and we've made sure that that case has been across the desks of ministers. And indeed, I think it was just last week we had a meeting with Jessie Norman from the Treasury, and we recognise the Treasury has a significant role to play in this. But quite a lot of detail. I think also disappointment, particularly with some of the feedback around Northern Powerhouse Rail. From West Yorkshire, we made it clear all the way through that we believe it's imperative that a new line is built between Leeds and Manchester, and that there is a station in Bradford, and we'll continue to make that very strong case. So we still haven't had the Williams review made public. I'm interested as well in the union connectivity review that Peter Handy is undertaking. I think we've got a really important role to play in that. But perhaps, Chair, we could hand over to Liz, who could give a bit more of the detail of the negotiations that we're involved in across the piece. And I just would like to express my concern here that the proposed cuts to TfN from government, suggested 50% cut, I think it's the wrong moment. If there has ever been a moment where the North needs to have a really strong voice in investment in future transport schemes, it's now. So we we'll all continue to offer our support to TfN, and hopefully government will have a bit of a rethink about that. But I would also like to take this opportunity, as well as thanking members for their support over the last few years, of thanking all of the officers at the Combined Authority, and their collective work has meant that we are a force to be reckoned with, and I think we are listened to in a way perhaps that we weren't several years ago. So thank you to all of you for the work that you've done, and of course the work that you'll continue to do going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Any questions or comments for Councillor Blake? Oh, it's Councillor Galton.
Thanks, Chair. I note that this is a paper for noting, and I think it sort of reflects the limbo that we've been left in as a region in terms of clarity about transport investment. And I'm glad that Councillor Blake referred to the Williams Rail Review, because I still don't understand what the delay is in terms of why the proposals didn't come forward at the end of 2019. And I'm not sure if Councillor Blake has an explanation from the government around that, with all these moments of engagement that have been happening around rail. And it must be very disappointed, because of course Councillor Blake and Roger Marsh have been involved in this and have put their own effort into trying to get some things moving. It doesn't seem to going anywhere. And then in terms of the comments that Councillor Blake has made about Transport for the North and the 50% reduction in funding, one thing that isn't mentioned in this paper is the Transport Acceleration Council, and how that fits in to all of these reviews and all of the decision making that's meant to be happening in a devolved fashion, because this looks like what was evolving as a devolved decision making body in Transport for the North has just been sidelined by some more centrally administered decision making from the Minister through the Transport Acceleration Council. But we still don't have anything definite on the ground in terms of what's going to be happening with our rail structure here in Yorkshire. So I'd be really grateful if some clarity could be delivered on that aspect. And if we are giving some pushback to say, you know, we don't need you to accelerate our transport, thank you, Minister. We can accelerate our own as long as you actually deliver us the resources and the ability for us to make decisions for ourselves, in the spirit of what Councillor Hinchcliffe was saying earlier. Thanks, Chair.
Chair, I'm happy to come back. I think if you recall, the Williams Review was set up as a response to the timetabling disaster back some months ago now. And quite frankly, the outcome of what's happened from that, but also before the pandemic, was we were starting to see the collapse of the franchises across the north. So some of the recommendations that Williams was putting forward in terms of reforming the franchising project, if you like, was overtaken by events. And I think that's the explanation. I agree with you. I believe all of these things should be out in the public domain. They should be being discussed, but clearly the Williams Review had some, we believe, has some significant recommendations around the relationship and the responsibilities of regional governance in the rail space. But we've been discussing at the Rail North Committee the fact that the foundations for that was built on the rail partners having a key role in those relationships, and obviously that role is disappearing with the way that the franchising collapse is taking forward. So I think there's a massive space at the moment to really fill in terms of reflecting what the future governance arrangement should be, and particularly from our point of view in terms of what the role of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority should be in that area. And perhaps Ben or Liz could comment on where they feel that we've got to in those partnership arrangements. But clearly it has been a moving picture, made much more complicated because of the collapse of the use of the railways by the travelling public that we've seen over the last 11 months or so. I agree with you about the Acceleration Council. It doesn't at the moment have a constitution that means it's a decision-making body. The meetings that we've had have been very much in the way of bringing people together to discuss what's on the table, but we need some answers from government about the future direction of travel in terms of decision making, and we haven't got it at the moment. But Chair, if we could bring Ben or Liz in to just outline the difficulties that they're actually highlighted by the delay in Williams, and in fact, actually the delay of being able to implement the Blake Jones review as well, because of the situation of the last 12 months. But if we could have some thoughts about what the collapse of the franchising model could mean in terms of opportunities for the combined authority, I'd be grateful.
And that's a key question, isn't it, really, Liz? Where's Liz gone? Liz, Ben? Well, she's there. Liz, did you want to come back in on that invitation from Councillor Blake to highlight that issue?
Yes, thank you for that. We are trying to keep close to the Department for Transport to understand when Williams will be published, but like many things, we get the answer, it'll be shortly. So no specific date, I'm afraid, but I think it's still on the government's agenda. I think in terms of the impact for us, there's certainly something around investment in the rail network, and whilst we continue to, as this paper sets out, the influencing role that we have on some of these major schemes, we're also investing locally, as colleagues know. So there's something around what is the future role of the combined authority in investing in the rail network, and who do we work in partnership with. And at the moment, the accountabilities between Network Rail, Department for Transport, train operating companies, it's not clear at times, and that's exactly what the Blake Jones review and the Williams review is trying to do, is create that clarity around accountability and responsibility, so that we as a region can play into that effectively. I think the second thing is around devolution, and I think Councillor Blake, you've already mentioned around the role of the Rail North Committee and partnerships, and realistically, given the amount of control that is back within the Department for Transport, how far we can influence those decisions. And so really look forward to hopefully a Williams review setting out greater clarity for how devolution arrangements could work in the future.
Thank you very much, Liz. Roger Marsh, you wanted to come in? I
wanted to just share my concern with that of Councillor Galton as a member of the Williams Rail Review. I keep asking, when is the hard work going to be made public? I know a number of facets have been trailed in the press, and it obviously would be inappropriate for me to either confirm or deny, but I recognise some of the thinking around of the future governance models that will, which together with other comments made by Councillor Blake, would improve the whole thing. I'm not actually quite sure whether I'm still a member of the review or not. I've not been formally terminated or brought to an end, but certainly Keith Williams and the other colleagues, we were quite far-reaching in our thinking in terms of recommendations of how to make things significantly better than perhaps currently they are. That's just to share, if I may, my own personal frustrations of having put a lot in and awaiting that outcome. And I'll be putting pressure on, personally, to say, where are we? Not particularly reassuring, but echoing, I guess, others' frustrations, not a criticism of anybody, but frustrations about wanting to see the light of day and getting on with the implementation.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think we're all very pro rail devolution, aren't we? But we're very keen to see what it looks like and get on with delivering it. So thank you. So any more comments or questions, obviously, before we move on from this? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, may I congratulate Councillor Blake and wish you well from all the Conservatives in the region, I'm sure. Well done. The question was just asked, maybe rhetorically, what can we do for rail as a combined authority. And in my opinion, there are things that we can most definitely do, and we have a very important role to play in this. I had a long discussion yesterday with Liz Hunter. The passion no doubt exists throughout this group today and elsewhere in Yorkshire. It's many times been said by businesses that east-west and regional communications are more important than some of the other things that are being looked at nationally. I think that as a combined authority, we've got two things that we can lobby for and chase for and influence that would make a big difference to our region and the north of England. And that is the electrification of our two Transpennine routes that we've got. And that is the Transpennine route, Huddersfield to Manchester Piccadilly, and the Calder Valley line, which, as you know, goes from Leeds through Bradford and into Victoria. There are connections being made in Manchester to link Victoria and Piccadilly, but the electrification is not just about the individual lines, but about the very strategic importance of electrification, because it gives a resilient route around our region of lines, a bit like the extension to the M60 when it was completed, so that there are other ways to get round that allow for engineering, accidents, bad weather, all of those things, but the whole system doesn't stop. So that electrification of the Calder Valley line, as well as the Transpennine line, is very important. We can do that without waiting for various commissions to come back with reports. And doing that alone would have a fantastic effect on our combined authority area. So I suggest we redouble our efforts to influence those changes which are already known about, already entirely possible. And I think we should concentrate on those right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Of course, the Calder Valley electrification will be hastened if we had MPR going through Bradford. So it just shows that everything is interlinked that we do. It's not one thing or the other. It's the whole totem of what's there. Is that not correct, Councillor Blake?
I'm just trying to frame my words carefully, because we've had a plan for electrification on Transpennine for years now, and I'm afraid it's the governments that have put it back, and it's been an incredibly frustrating process to go through. So please, can you use your good officers in terms of communicating with the Conservative government to get on with the promises that they've made over a number of years in terms of delivering this work. It's just no secret to any of us that the North has been repeatedly shortchanged in terms of investment, and some of the things that have been in the pipeline could be, worked forward at speed. However, I don't think it's our role at this point in time to undo the excellent work that we've achieved across the North, actually demonstrating that we can work together, we can prioritise. We know, because of all of the economic modelling that we've done, what will bring real benefit to us, and we need commitment from government on schemes that they've actually shown support for, and we need their commitment to get on and start delivering. I think what business will say is that they know that some of the schemes won't be able to come on track straight away. What they want is the commitment, and therefore the business boost and confidence that the North will get from the commitment from government. There's a real opportunity coming up with the budget, and we would just urge the Chancellor to get on, commit to the schemes, and so that we can move forward and start delivering our part of the economic recovery, not only for West Yorkshire and Yorkshire, but for the whole of the country. The only way that the country is going to move forward from the impact of the pandemic is for the government to really invest in combined authorities in city regions. We have the keys to the success for the future. So please, let's all, and it's great if we've got a cross-party demand for that. Let's get on and lobby government and say, come on, we've waited long enough. We need to get on with it.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Blake. That sounds like a good rallying call to end on. With that then, we will take that report for noting. Obviously, there's a lot more to do on that. And as I say, if we can all use our contacts nationally to make sure they realise how important this agenda is for the growth of our region, that would be great.
Chair, just sorry, going back to your original announcement, I've heard my title is now official. It's been published in the London Gazette this morning. So I can tell you that I'm Baroness Blake of Gledhow in the city of Leeds, and I'll be known as Baroness Blake of Leeds.
That's marvellous, isn't it? Congratulations, Judith. It really is wonderful news.
Thank you.
We all share in your joy at the appointment, and it's great to have a friend in West Yorkshire in high places. So and thank you for the invitation for tea. I'm sure we'll take you up on the offer when we're able to do so, because we'll all be going out when we can, won't we?
Thank you.
Hopefully, and cakes.
Yes.
Oh, don't get too carried away.
Thank you very much, Judy. Or Baroness Blake, I should say, really. Thank you. So moving on now to the next item on the agenda, which again is the future. So mayoral combined authority preparations. And in fact, we as the leaders got a letter from Minister Luke Hall on Friday, I think it was, to say the order has finally been laid. There is no turning back for government now. Devolution is here, and we're accelerating towards a mayoral combined authority and a mayor as for next May. So obviously there's quite a lot of technical details on this paper which need to be sorted and which we need to take a decision on today. But Ben, would you like to give us a bit of an overview about where you are at the moment with those preparations?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can I just start by extending on behalf of officers our best wishes and congratulations to Baroness Blake as well, to Councillor Blake. We really do look forward to working with you on West Yorkshire issues going forward, and will indeed be forming a long line for tea in the house, outside the House of Lords. So it's been a pleasure working with you, and we hope to do so again in the future. So apologies for the fact that this is a long and complex paper, but there's, as Councillor Hinchcliffe has said, there is a fair amount to set out in the paper. Effectively, it does a couple of tasks. It provides an update on the preparations that we're making since the last time we published an update, which was back in July 2020. In terms of the elements within that, there's probably three to cover. The first, as Councillor Hinchcliffe has indicated, is with regard to the order. The key thing being that the order has now come into effect. That creates some new functions for the combined authority which take immediate effect, and some further functions that come into effect when the mayor is elected. Those functions that come into immediate effect are around skills and regeneration in particular, and on the skills side, particularly relating to the adult education budget. And so the paper sets out how we would propose to manage decision making within the current structures of the combined authority for those new functions, and they're set out in the paper and in section 9.1 of the recommendations. The second part of the paper then sets out progress against the work streams. That in turn breaks into three areas. The work that we've done primarily to learn from other mayoral combined authorities about the preparations they made, the things that they think it's important that we do, and the things that they've recommended to us where we need to think about capacity and the resources necessary to deliver the range of new functions. So the paper sets out where we are on those issues. It also then talks about the organisational preparations that we're putting in place, particularly with regards to some of the new areas of functionality. And then finally, and thirdly and finally, talks about progress on the devolution deal work streams, particularly regarding the incorporation functions around the OPCC the work on the assurance framework and on the adult education budget as well. And it's just worth highlighting that only last week, or in fact only this week, the government has approved our revised assurance framework. So my thanks to Melanie and her officers that worked tirelessly on that, and officers across West Yorkshire authorities that were involved in that process. And we've also had confirmation of the funding for the adult education budget as well this week, which is really positive, and that builds on previous documents approved by this authority. The final part of the paper then takes some of that work around the capacity and the resources that we need, and creates the framework for that via a restructure of the organisation to be fit for purpose, particularly looking at areas such as commercialisation, the enhanced scrutiny functions that we'll need around casework, and how we best incorporate the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. And it sets out a recommendation to restructure the top of the organisation and create an additional director post, which again forms part of the recommendations seeking your approval today. Sorry, that's a bit lengthy, but I'll stop there, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. So really important that we're geared up and ready to deliver. So obviously it's going to be a greater breadth of delivery that we're going to be doing in the future, and therefore we need to make sure we've got the right staff in place ready to really move motor from May next year. Councillor Galton, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I want to declare an interest, obviously, as one of the candidates for the role of Mayor, and I won't be voting on this because I'm not sure if it's completely appropriate. But I did want to voice my concerns that the whole point about having an elected Mayor, although I'm not sure I agree with it in particular, but the philosophy behind it was that they would have strong executive direction, and I would like to think that somebody who is taking over an administration of an organisation would potentially want to put their own mark on that organisation and how it works. And I think a lot of this, which is in this paper, is presumptive. And I think it would be entirely appropriate, where possible, for the issues that are raised here, that the decision making around them could be delayed and deferred somewhat until the new Mayor is actually elected. Because personally, if I was elected, I would have significant concerns around the automatic creation of a new director post, when one of the criticisms that there has been of this organisation is that it is far too top heavy with senior officer staff. And I think whoever gets elected should be able to review that recommendation in depth. And I also appreciate that there has been some criticism around the scrutiny function of the combined authority and preparations for the enhanced scrutiny which would be needed for mayoral rule. And I would like to think that the Mayor would want to demonstrate their accountability through perhaps enhancing that structure, and I'm not sure if that's particularly addressed in this paper. So as I said, I think it's a little bit presumptive, and I would recommend really a deferral for all of the decisions that could be made within this paper until the Mayor gets elected.
Which will be a massive mistake, Councillor Galton, because we're in the middle of a pandemic where we need to accelerate growth as soon as we can. You cannot say we don't need additional commercial expertise for where we're going forward. It's absolutely essential. I can also say, just in comparison to other mayoral combined authorities, we're actually very underpowered at senior level. I don't know where you think we've got more senior management than other places. We just look at the comparisons. So I just moved to Ben. Do you want to come back on that? You've probably been working on, or perhaps Alan.
Chair, I'm happy to come back. I mean, certainly we thought very carefully, Councillor Galton, about that perspective, and we've absolutely gone out of our way to make sure that we're not putting in we're not fettering the discretion of what decisions that the mayor would choose to make once they come into office. However, what we have tried to do is learn from our conversations with other mayoral combined authorities about the particular areas of capacity that they felt were necessary, and indeed were recommending to us that we put those in place before the mayor arrives, so that the mayor can be adequately supported when they arrive, and that the organisation can and the mayor can hit the ground running. But to your point about not wanting to defer decisions, one of the things that is included in the paper is the option that we've certainly been considering as officers of filling the director role with an interim in the first instance, and then allowing the mayor to be involved in the recruitment process for that additional director post in time. So I would say that we've been absolutely alive to the points that you're making, but as Councillor Hinchcliffe has said, we've got to get the organisation ready for its new responsibilities, and that includes scrutiny as well, where, as you're aware, we are looking at how we best bolster scrutiny going forwards.
Thank you very much. Any more comments or questions? Councillor Paulson. I think Councillor Swift as well, I think indicating. So Councillor Paulson first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a comment really, is obviously as the mayoral combined authority will now inevitably have to grow to take on its new powers and responsibilities, that we do bear in mind that, you know, the public out there, it's taxpayers' money, it's hard-earned money that's funding this. And we do need to demonstrate to them that it is value for money and that they could see positive impacts on their lives coming out of the decisions of the mayor and the members of the combined authority going forward. So not a question, just an observation.
No, absolutely, Councillor Paulson, because and I think regardless of the combined authority or local authorities, we all need to show impacts and positive impacts that we bring to people's lives through the work we do, don't we? Otherwise, people start to, question why they're living in this area or country. And I think that's a big conundrum of politics, to show that voting makes a difference to the service that you receive. And absolutely, I accept that challenge. Councillor Swift, and I think Councillor Groves was indicating.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to strongly support your position on this. Clearly, there will be things that an incoming mayor will want to influence and change, and they will bring to that role a mixture of both direct, some direct powers that they exercise directly, and a lot more soft power from having been elected through hopefully a large public mandate. But equally, the existing combined authority, the members of the combined authority, will continue to play a role as well. But more importantly, just as Councillor Paulson says, we have to demonstrate that this structure is going to deliver, and we have quite a lot of programmes already in place, I think particularly around the Transforming Cities Fund, but the new responsibilities around adult education, the money around housing through the Brownfield Fund and so on. And frankly, we need to demonstrate that we are going to get on and deliver for these for the benefits of our community, and delaying on some of these key decisions will not help with that.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor Swift. Councillor Groves.
Yeah, I just want to sort of add that actually I've nearly spent 3 years at the Combined Authority on a daily basis. I think one of the biggest risks is resource, and it's very, for everything that we've delivered so far, including Transforming Cities, it's been done on skeleton staffing in comparison to Liverpool, Manchester and the West Midlands. So I would imagine that the team will have to expand, but also that actually I would expect to probably see more director roles as we go into different markets, and we try and meet the ambitions for the people of West Yorkshire.
That's a very good point, Councillor Groves, in that I've seen other combined authorities getting money out of government because they've got the plans in place, they've had all the consultants do the work on roads, on rail, on feasibility studies, and they're able to say, this is something you can fund straight away. We need to be in the same position, a pipeline of projects coming through, which when money comes out from government, we can go straight in and draw that money down and deliver straight away. So absolutely, we need ambition for our place, and absolutely we need to be value for money, but we also need to deliver the ambition that our people rightly expect of us. Roger?
I just wanted to add
my own personal comments, because absolutely correct. When deploying taxpayers' money in whatever way, we've got to be acutely aware of our obligation, obligations, both individually and collectively. But what I can say, as somebody that has had the privilege of being a member of this combined authority since it started in the 1st of April 2014, and obviously works closely with a number of the people on this call and otherwise, that the challenge facing us is the depth and range of our capacity and capability to deliver on this agenda and to keep the momentum up that we've built together over the last 6 years of the Local Growth Fund to deliver the sort of change we've achieved to date, which has meant that whilst the economy of our part of the world, as indeed everywhere, has suffered significantly, the counterfactual would have been that damage would have been even greater, bad though it is, but even greater than is the current position. So I understand Councillor Galton's remarks. It's not for me to say whether we should do this, that, or the other individually. It's for us to collectively. But my observation is that we have been quite lean and mean, and particularly when we've had new funding streams coming along and had to divert colleagues from delivery to make our successful bids in, and TCF was a classic example which I observed day to day. So just to share from the ground floor, as it were, how it feels at times.
Thank you, Roger. So with that good discussion, any more comments or questions before we move to recommendations and voting? So I will recommend these proposals. Can I see all those in favour, please show? Thank you, that is carried. Thank you very much. And we're on the next step to Merrill devolution next year. Thank you very much for that. So the next item is corporate planning and performance. Is that Angela? Angela, how are we doing?
It is. We're doing fine, thank you. I'll keep it brief. This is a shorter report than you normally get because all the budget items have been dealt with in the previous report we talked about earlier this morning. So this is primarily giving you the performance snapshot, which looks at our performance against our KPIs and risk update. So it shows some good performance on the KPIs despite the sort of challenging environment we're in. The headline on risk is there's no changes from last time we looked at this in terms of those risks we have deemed as very high. Clearly, as we're developing up the business plan for next year, and now we have got the final seal on being a mayoral combined authority, it would probably be appropriate to look again at whether the risk register needs to be updated for any of all of those. So we will look at that and bring some updates to a future meeting.
Thank you. Indeed, risk register is something we should always keep sight of as a very fast moving world these days, and that may adjust as we travel through the next year. Any comments or questions? Is this report for noting, Angela?
It is, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, in that case, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which I just can't quite remember then, which is, wait for it. It's European Structural Fund, is it? Am I at that place now then?
This is where we need to clear most people out of the room and stop live streaming, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. I don't need to read anything out then?
We'll just clear everybody out, I think now. You made the recommendation.